Now, an asbestos-tainted mulch is wreaking havoc across Sydney. There are major health concerns with up to 100 sites, including a major park and schools, already impacted this year.
More than 100 EPA investigators are probing how the mulch became tainted, and the New South Wales government has announced now a task force to investigate. Meanwhile, tomorrow's Mardi Gras Fair Day has been cancelled at Victoria Park in Camperdown, and Liverpool West Public School has been forced to shut down for weeks. And joining us now is Dr. Sneha Wahdwani. Good morning to you, Doctor. Explain the dangers of asbestos.
I think it's really important to recognise that asbestos is actually a naturally occurring mineral, and it is in the air all around us all of the time in very, very small quantities. And as we know of asbestos, it does occur in building materials and the like, and in most of those situations where it's actually bound and stable, it's not a significant danger. The issue arises when it becomes unbound and unstable. So when we damage these materials, these fibres that make up asbestos that are super fine, so finer than a hair, can be created into a dust, and those can be inhaled. And that dust and the inhalation of those fibres causes damage to predominantly the lungs, but also other organs.
I mean, it's been a fairly confronting week for a lot of Sydney families. I know myself when I turned on the news and saw a park that my kids play in basically every afternoon as one of those parks. So to parents who have been watching, what is the risk for their exposure, particularly with young children or those who are immunocompromised who have been in these areas?
So I think we've got to remember that asbestos exposure is really dangerous when it's consistent and when there are large volumes or larger volumes. So that environmental exposure that we talked about that is in the air around us all the time is less of a risk. I think the difficulty with the mulch exposure is we can't yet quantify what that is. And until we know more information in that space, it's going to be difficult to assess, what risk these people who've been exposed in those environments, such as the children you're talking about, what the real risk is in that space.
Yeah, particularly the way children play in playgrounds and the fact that, they're often their hands in dirt or doing exactly what we want them to do. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is a concern still for the community.
As you say, not knowing the quantities is what's so frightening here, and the government's announced this task force. If you think you have been exposed, as a doctor, what would be your advice?
So remembering again, it's about, how frequently you're exposed, how long you're exposed, and what kind of asbestos exposure you've had. So if you're a labourer and you're dealing with insulating products, obviously that's a significant exposure. And if you're doing that every day over a long period of time, we would be concerned about that. But I think if anyone is concerned at all, whether it's you're doing DIY in your home or in your garden shed, or you think you may have been exposed in a situation such as this, the best thing to do is to go to your doctor to talk about what's happened, and your doctor will be able to assess that based on the risk, really. In addition to that, we've got to also remember that, our local councils are able to give advice, certainly in terms of what we think we might have been exposed to at home. And if you're working in a job where you believe you've been exposed at work, then you should inform your employer as well.
Yeah, frightening time if you're a tradie or if you think you've been exposed. Doctor, thank you for running through the details this morning.